The topic of climate change is an issue that is heavily discussed to the extent that it was spoken about during the presidential debates, and a contributing factor to climate change is our waste management.
The waste management in the United States is really in trouble and it's not affecting.
In 1934, the U.S. Supreme Court bans the dumping of waste into the ocean, and in 1947, consumerism reaches an all-time high due to the convenience and low cost of plastic, resulting in 60% increase in packaging disposal. Athens, Greece is required by law for dumping to be 1 mile away from the city to preserve the beauty and prevent any illness.
Back then, in the Industrial Revolution, Benjamin Franklin introduced the first street cleaning service in addition to asking the people to dig pipes in the ground to spill any waste.
Waste management dates back to the BC era, but the issue of waste management began in the 20th century. By the 20th century, landfills began to grow throughout the United States and Canada.
We started to develop the garbage trucks, formerly known as the waste management.
We have so many landfills that it is not safe. When these multiple piles of waste get burned, it releases a dangerous amount of carbon dioxide. To add on, a lot of U.S. citizens have argued to change our climate change to the government since we're struggling with it. Waste management was upgraded to hold more waste by residents and businesses. Fast forward to today, Americans contribute to about 20% of the world's garbage. In the 21st century, the U.S. implemented a pay-as-you-go. The plastic packaging we use to wrap single products is wasteful. Waste can be managed better through reusing it, recycling it, storing it, treating it, using it for energy recovery, disposing it, and even releasing it to the environment. A lot of our waste is disposed into landfills. The massive waste is not biodegradable nor recyclable or properly recycled. That all that waste is ending up in our oceans and landfills, causing climate change. In 2019, there was a study showing 6.3 billion metric tons of plastic waste has been produced, but only 9% was recycled.
The environmental impact of improper waste disposal starts with humans, from residential areas to businesses, which affect humans, but it does not stop there. It continues on to land, water, and air pollution. It also continues to animal and marine life, disease, radiation, and hazardous materials in the immediate timeline of disposal.
It takes up to 2 decades for certain types of plastic to decompose. Others can take centuries.
Plastics, metallics, and synthetic materials remain the way they are and will continue to produce toxic waste that can poison local waters until they decompose.
The goal of our campaign is to improve waste management in America to be more energy efficient and environmentally responsible. We want to convince policymakers to adopt the waste management practices of other countries, such as Sweden and Singapore, within the next 5 years. If we don't do something now, waste management is just going to make climate change a worse problem. But the goal of our campaign right now really is just to inform people of all the alternatives that our waste management system could be. For example, Singapore and Sweden incinerate their garbage and turn it into usable energy. On the other hand, places like Switzerland actually enforce their reduce, reuse, recycle programs. Of course, the best way to implement some of these changes is to first off be informed. Most people are unaware of the problem, and therefore the issue is not spoken about in local or national politics. Consider green policies. They often take into account waste disposal methods as part of their budget. Improving city infrastructure also goes a long way to reduce waste, better facilities, and less need for disposable materials. Voters could also consider totally banning foam-based materials. Foam-based materials tend to degrade the slowest in landfills. You could also support legislation that enforces the development and use of biodegradable plastics, specifically if we do need plastics to remain. Also, you could support laws that penalize poor waste management and incentivize recycling. But, as said, one of the best ways to enact change for the problem is to be consciously aware of what the actual problem is. The average American produces about 4.4 pounds of trash every single day. Now, just being mindful of how much single-use items you use and throw away is going to add up and make a huge difference. Individually, one of the other things that you can do is to go electronic. When you're at the store, you can opt for email receipts. When you're at the bank, you can also opt for electronic documents. If you're a student, you can go for ebooks as opposed to physical books. This reduces a lot of paper waste that stacks up every single year. On the topic of cutting down waste, you could always opt for longevity. Buying secondhand or durable clothes as opposed to fast fashion is one such ways. You could always buy reusable materials such as bags, backpacks, utensils, books, containers. Repairing those things and reusing them is much better than disposing them after using them once. We also really often talk about reducing, reusing, and recycling, but surprisingly, not a lot of people actually follow that. By enforcing it as a social expectation like we have so many other things, it really adds up and maybe people will start actually practicing it. In many European countries, people actually strictly enforce waste management at an individual level. All in all, America's methods of waste management are just horribly inefficient. Landfills have taken care of the problem for a long time by taking all of the garbage and just keeping it out of sight. That doesn't work anymore. Landfills can further poison the land and environment, and it's really just not sustainable. It's just hiding garbage to deal with at a later date. This needs to change. The US is so far behind in how it manages waste compared to other countries. Legislation needs to continue to tighten around the production of single-use items, while individuals themselves need to be consciously aware of how much waste they produce. Longer-lasting materials and helping to enforce recycling norms will do a lot. Waste really doesn't have to be wasted.